This episode of Impact was recorded on the traditional lands of the Darumbal people in Rockhampton and produced on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation in Melbourne. CQUniversity pays respects to elders past and present and recognises Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander traditions of research and storytelling. Welcome to Impact Research Podcast for CQUniversity. And I wanted to start with some big questions. Questions like, how can buildings meet our post-carbon future? Questions like, how do women who are athletes and athletes at the highest level continue competing after they've had a baby? And questions like, how do trains stay on the rails? So these questions all have one answer, believe it or not, and that answer is research, and actually outstanding research by these three researchers joining us today. I'd love you to all introduce yourself, and starting at the other end of the panel with Bill.
Yeah, I'm an associate professor in built environment from Sydney campus. I'm based in School of Engineering and Technology.
I'm a senior lecturer in the School of Health, Medical Applied Sciences. I teach into allied health and am an active research member of the Appleton Institute.
My name is Xianbo, and I joined the CQU in 2013, so nearly 10 years now, and got my PhD here in 2016. Currently, I'm a research fellow in the Centre for Railway Engineering.
Welcome all, and thank you. Now, those are short introductions. Obviously, in the research world, things can get pretty long and convoluted, but I'm going to set for a start the ultimate researcher challenge. Can you describe your research and what you're trying to achieve in one sentence? And Qing, let's start with you.
All right, I'll try. So at this moment, we're trying to take advantage of the latest development in the information and the communication technology to automate train operations, to put more trains on track and run them faster and safer. Yeah.
Sounds like a great outcome. Thank you for doing that. Mel?
So my research aims to improve the exercise behaviours of pregnant and postpartum women and to actively encourage safe and appropriate exercise behaviours.
Yeah, my research aims to achieve a sustainable, efficient and effective process of construction for the building and the infrastructure projects.
Okay, so between you, decades of research experience, but I'd love you to go back to the very start when maybe you didn't even really know what the research world was. How did the passion begin for your particular discipline and topic? Bill, did you live in buildings?
So my passion about the research actually began when I pursued my bachelor degree in China, and then increased significantly when I pursued my PhD in Singapore, because my supervisory team is very experienced and they know how to motivate me and give me support. So that's the great passion about the research begins because I'm interested in research and they can make me interested in the research.
Yeah. I can imagine.
So that's the power of the supervisors.
It's so important to have a good team. And I think, Mel, you've got a similar origin story. There was one supervisor who turned your career in a particular direction.
Yeah, so I had absolutely no interest in research. I was quite happy as a secondary teacher and I actually fell pregnant with my first child, and it was that experience. And as a part of that experience, I received some really contradictory advice from health professionals with regards to my exercise behaviours. And I was really unsure as to what I should do. And I figured that if I was unsure with an exercise science background, then there's a lot of women out there that are also really unsure. And that was my motivator. And it continues to be my motivator. But yeah, once I decided to do a PhD to follow down that pathway, I was fortunate to have a really fantastic.
For my case, I was lucky to be part of a couple of international conferences on railways, and during the conferences, I got to know a number of top experts in the field who imparted me quite good ideas. Then talked with my supervisors and decided to pursue research. Yeah.
And in the passion for trains specifically as well, did that predate the conferences? Like I'm picturing you with, little toy trains that came off the rails and you needed to put them back on. But was that your origin story?
No, it's just by chance because when I was a high school student, I didn't know much about railways. Just by chance, I went to a university who had a very strong research in railways. Then they did very good job get me to be interested in this field. Yeah.
Okay, and you've come to another university that has strong railways as well.
Yeah, so that's right. Actually, the story was that I didn't know much about Rockhampton and also this area before, but I read papers about the research here. So I contacted the supervisors here, then they granted me scholarship and I came to here and never left.
But I feel like, Rockhampton Tourism Association needs to get onto that, more promotion in scholarly papers about railways, and you'll have everyone coming. So you've talked about, that first interest in the research, but then obviously there's been a long road to hoe since then. Has there been something that's kept you most motivated as you've continued your research careers? And perhaps starting with you, Qing?
Yeah, just saying there's so many unanswered questions, and say the senior professors, they are pushing hard to, explore the new knowledge. I think that's always been a motivation to me, just to follow their steps and to also contribute to this field, I think, these days.
Yeah. Mel, is that the same for you? There's lots of questions to answer.
Absolutely, and my motivation hasn't changed. So I'm still just as motivated now as I ever was to contribute to developing an educational base to help inform pregnant women and also postpartum women, along with health professionals.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and my answer is quite similar to Qing and Mel. And in addition, I have a sense of achievement when I publish some papers in the top journals or recognized by the other researchers from other countries. So my name can be known by other countries' researchers is a sense of achievement for me.
That is a great motivator as well, and to know that you're at the top of your field. And I should say you're recognized by Stanford University as in the top 2% of all scientists in the building and construction field. And, your research, Bill, is looking at green buildings and how we make transport more sustainable and even risk and waste management. So we're talking about, a better world and a greener future. It's really for the people and the planet. What excites you the most in that field?
It's actually about the sustainable development. We know sustainable development has three interrelated dimensions. That's the economic, social, and the environmental sustainability. And my research focused on social and environmental sustainability. And recognized by that ranking is actually bring me a great sense of achievement, and the international recognition of my research is actually recognition of my past few years research activities. So it's very exciting to me.
Yes, very. Mel, is that similar for you? You're working with household names in your research, like the Australian Institute of Sport and some of the top sporting codes and obviously athletes by association. How have you approached getting in the room with the heavy hitters, and why have you set your research up that way?
Yeah, look, I think preparation is always key. I do quite often find myself pinching myself when I am in that room. I was actually in a meeting the other day with the Chief Medical Officer for the Australian Olympic team, and there were two other Olympians. And I love my sport. Sport and exercise are a very big part of my life, and I was just like, oh my gosh, is this really happening? But I think it's really critical to develop those mutually beneficial relationships with industry and with government, because that helps for me to translate my research so that I've got a really great, effective platform to reach my end users. So if I can bring those government and industry bodies in, then I've got greater reach, which means greater impact, which means better health benefits, and my research has greater impact on those that need it the most.
it must be really satisfying to see that, at a top level and know that it's going to trickle down, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And organisations such as the AIS have the capacity to do that.
Yeah. Qing, you're in this podcast spotlight today, but recently you were in the spotlight at the 12th International Conference for Contact Mechanics and Wear of Rail and Wheel Systems. Now, this sounds really niche, but I assume it's very important as well, and probably very valuable work that you're doing to rail companies. Can you tell us, how your predictive 3D modelling that you were talking about is so important to that industry?
Yeah, yes, indeed. This conference is one of the prestigious conferences in the railway research. So because the wheels and the rail are made of steel, they're very hard. So the contact between the wheel and the rail are actually the size of your thumbnails.
Okay.
So just imagine like 160 tons of load and just applied on those small areas. The wheel and the rail experience very heavy wear and the crack and the break. So in this, this is mainly the topic of the conference. So my research is mainly trying to look at the whole picture of the railway system. Say what's the influences of other parts influencing on that small area.
Wow.
And trying to save more maintenance budget for the railway companies. Yeah.
You've explained that beautifully. I've never felt sorry for rail lines before, but that sounds exhausting. Those poor rails. So thank you for your work to ease the load on them. All of you are talking about the work you do, in a bigger picture. Your research is community connected, and certainly these excellence awards also acknowledge that, and a big part of that is the engagement with the community within the research. So what communities are you working with that you've been most excited about? Qing, is it the rail companies, or who are you most excited to work with?
Yeah, rail company is what we serve directly, but the general public's conception and recognition of the significance of rail transport is more, important. And we know rail transportation is generally like 4 times more energy efficient than road transport.
Yes.
So if we can get public and the government to recognize that and trying to further develop the rail industry, I think these days we looking for a green future.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the direction we should pay attention to and should work on. Yeah.
That's a good point, that the work really is about, not just saving the rail companies money, but sustainability.
Yes, it is.
Oh, brilliant. What about you, Mel?
I, again, being an avid sports fanatic, I would have to say that it's that elite community, the elite athlete community, because I get to do the research that I love, but I also get to immerse myself in that high-performance sporting environment. And I find that when you're dealing with athletes, they're highly motivated, they're highly organised, they're very inspirational, especially for me. So I just love that space, and it's really rewarding and really exciting.
It sounds like I'm sure you're not short on energy in the first place, but it sounds like you get a lot of energy from that as well. Is that sort of key to the work you do?
Yeah, it's knowing that my research can actively, in a positive way, contribute to the betterment of their health and well-being. It's super cool.
Yep. And Bill, what about you? Like, obviously you're working in the constructed world, but what are the communities behind that you're working with?
There are the construction companies, like the builders or the civil engineering companies. And some of my research outcomes, such as the risk management framework, has already been applied by some international construction companies in Africa and Latino American. And I also have some interactions with the academic community in other countries, such as the international collaboration. So we collaborate on the international research funds.
And I can imagine that, great if we're building, good green construction in Australia, but it has to be global to make a difference.
Yeah, because we have the advances in this area, so we need to share the research results with other countries.
Is there somewhere that your research has informed an actual development? Can you drive past it and go, yes, that's green?
Sure, likely.
Yeah, what's your favourite one to check out?
It's still like the risk management.
Yes, okay.
The risk management is because during the pandemic, and now we may have the financial crisis, the global financial crisis again. So there are many uncertainties and risks. So many companies, such as the building and the construction companies, are confronted with the risk and the uncertainties.
Yeah.
So they need such risk management framework.
Yeah, I can imagine that's so valuable. Guys, we started with talking about the people who are around you, who got you started on your research journeys, but now you're all in leadership roles and you're mentoring the next generation of research students coming through. Is there one thing you've learnt along the way, or one piece of advice that you give everyone that you're mentoring that is particularly valuable to you? Maybe Qing, would you like to start us off?
Yeah. When we talking about young researchers and younger researchers, and students, my recommendation is when we at the starting stage of the research and trying to solve a problem, when we pick the method to solve the problem, we should pick the methods who have wider application spectrum.
Okay.
In that case, after we finished the project or finished the PhD, you'll be able to use the method to other fields as well. So it's not just confined in the specific problem.
Yeah, right. That is great advice, sort of having a big picture when, I can imagine in PhDs, the tendency is to think very narrowly.
Yeah.
Mel?
I probably have two pieces of advice. Sorry.
Excellent. Lay them on it.
The first would be that I think as a researcher, you have to get comfortable with having a never-ending to-do list. It feels like you might do one task, but then there's another two that you add to it. And I think it's important that we learn to be able to be comfortable with that, and that in being comfortable with that, we also prioritise time for ourselves and our health and our well-being. And then the second one is, I think, if you're going to be a researcher, find something that you're passionate about, because the journey is so much more rewarding and it's so much easier if you're invested in what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bill, you can probably relate to that, having the endless to-do list. How do you help your students and manage
I ask them to be positive about the research, to have a positive attitude towards the uncertain futures. Because being a researcher, we need to be prepared to get any challenges or criticisms from other researchers in the peer review process. So most of my proposals and the publications will be declined in the first round.
Yeah.
And we need to revise and resubmit and wait for it will be a long time of waiting and revision. And then finally maybe successful or unsuccessful. So we need to be patient.
Okay.
And optimistic.
Look, that sounds like good life advice, let alone advice for student researchers. So thank you. This podcast is called Impact Research Podcast. Impact is what we're all about with our research at CQ Uni. Is there one impact that you've had along your research career that you're particularly proud of? Is it one of those buildings, Bill? Is it a particular discovery? Could you tell us about it?
It's actually, I think it's the international recognition of my publications or the research outcomes. That's the most important thing, because when we talk about impact, we need to have the social impact and the academic impact. And these papers or publications in the top journals have the academic impact.
Yeah.
And the international recognition is very important for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What about you, Mel?
Definitely not one discovery, but I think probably the co-authorship of the Australian Exercise During Pregnancy Guidelines is probably the most impactful to date, purely because it has the platform to reach all pregnant women across Australia. The guidelines were very forward-thinking, so we've also been able to engage internationally as a result of the development of those guidelines.
Yeah, I can imagine the flow-on effect of that. But then also the personal satisfaction. Are you forwarding those guidelines to every pregnant woman you know?
Absolutely. Anyone on my mailing list, I'm like, check these out.
Yeah, great.
You know, and to know that there's health professionals that are using them, and to know that there's that translation again to our GPs, to exercise physiologists, and readily available to all Australian women is super satisfying.
That is a game changer, absolutely.
Yeah.
Qing, what about you?
Well, I want to talk about an ongoing project we're doing at this moment to improve the brake prediction for railway trains. In this project, we got researchers from 12 countries and from 24 different research institute universities come together to find the best way to predict train braking performance.
Yep.
And CQU and myself is leading that project. And we have done a number of publications in that. And at this moment, we are organizing some special issue and workshop together and trying to push forward to achieve better accuracies.
Trains braking accurately is definitely high on things you want to happen in the world, so thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
The potential is huge, obviously. As you said before, trains and their sustainability considerations are, so important for a green future too. It's been so interesting to talk to you, and you've probably, I should say as well, that as researchers, you haven't met each other a lot in your research. You know, Mel hasn't been working with Qing on pregnant people catching trains or anything like that.
But we did actually meet, when was it?
Yeah, for the research pitch.
I was
Mm.
Qing's mentor for the 5-minute research pitch.
Yeah.
Great.
And he had to explain the complexities of his research in 5 minutes to a layperson audience, and he was amazing. He did such a phenomenal job.
Yeah, thanks for the mentor. We did well in that competition, and we achieved the first in CQU and the second international.
Congratulations. And that's probably a good point to make as well, that both Melanie and Qing did their PhDs at CQ Uni as well. So it's been a long journey as researchers as well as graduate researchers. As you found out more about each other in this conversation, who's got a question? Is there anything burning that you want to ask each other now?
I would like to ask, how do you deal with the criticism or the comments in the research proposal application?
Oh, wow, that's a big one. I think every researcher listening wants to know this as well.
I mean, it's like with everything, you take it with a grain of salt, and if you think the comments and the criticisms can help to improve what you're doing, then you make those changes, and if not, you
fight back.
Find a happy medium.
That's a better answer. Yeah.
Yeah, because I genuinely don't think that the people that are providing the feedback are providing that feedback from a place, from a negative place, or to be hurtful. So I feel like even sometimes comments, depending on how they're written, may not actually be provided in the context that they were meant for.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we look at those comments as an opportunity to make our overall project or product better, and if they are negative, then it's like, okay, move on.
Well, look, hopefully we'll have lots of positive comments on the back of this podcast at least, and that can be very uplifting for everyone. Yeah, great question. Thank you, Bill.
I was wondering, you mentioned that you've got 24 institutes from 12 countries. How do you manage that? How do you facilitate that? Because you've got different time zones and you've potentially got different languages. How do you go about doing that?
I think these days we use English across all the countries. But it's railway research is relatively smaller than other fields like communication, technology, ICT, and we know each other better. So during the project, so we already know who's doing what. So Then we met them at conference, and we get some initial ideas. Then everybody trying to go out, find their own, their own contact who are doing research in this field. Then we come together. But for the management, it is challenging because different countries, they would have their own idea into, okay, we should towards this direction, we should toward that direction. I think in this case, we need to get more researchers who have more experience to set guidelines, to set directions. It cannot be done by one person. We need experts who have more authorities in the field.
Look, so great to have this chat with you all. We know that you're all outstanding researchers because you got the awards from the Vice-Chancellor, but it's been outstanding hearing a bit more about your research here today on CQUniversity Impact Podcast. So thank you so much, Associate Professor Bill Zhao, who's the Mid-Career Research Award recipient, Dr. Melanie Hayman and Dr. Qing Wu, the Early Career Research Award recipients. Thank you for joining us on CQUniversity Impact Podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you, audience. And let's give it up. Yay!